Let's keep dancing. Duke basketball in the Final Four. A really exciting matchup coming up against Houston. Feeling good about Duke's chances going into this game. Let's talk about it here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. So great to have you here with us today on Wednesday, April 2nd, 2025. As Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop where we discuss everything going on inside the life of Duke athletics. We're talking a lot about Duke basketball, set to play in the Final Four this weekend against Houston. The winner of that game will take on the winner of Auburn and Florida for the right to be the national champions here in 2025. Fired up that Duke is still a part of the conversation. And we're going to break it all down with our good friend, Conor O'Neill from Devils Illustrated, Duke.Rivals.com, here to chat with us on the program once again today. If you have not done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free, wherever it is that you get your podcast. Leave us a 5-star rating and written review. Also, you can watch our show each and every day on YouTube. Like these videos, share them with your friends, and subscribe to our YouTube channel as we're growing our audience over there. We're on X at LO_Blue Devils. Find us on Instagram, TikTok. We're all over the place. Go and support Locked On Blue Devils. It means a lot when you're able to do those things. So without further ado, let's bring Conor O'Neill into the program, man. And super excited to still have Duke basketball in our lives and playing as they get set to take on Houston this weekend, man. I hope you're doing well. We saw this game last year in the NCAA tournament in the Sweet 16. Now we just move it 2 rounds further, and I'm excited about this matchup.
Yeah, kind of from a story perspective, I hope Houston doesn't lose their best player about 12 minutes into the game, as much as that helped Duke last year. The game just didn't ever feel right without Jamal Shead. He means so much to him, but yeah, it's a heavyweight matchup, right? You're going to have those all weekend. That's what happens when you have the second time ever that 4 number 1s make it to the Final Four. Should be a good one.
Excited that it worked out this way because, I mean, yeah, a lot of people, they're looking at the brackets. You're wondering, is this the year that we'll have 4 number 1s once again? And then you see these teams and how they rank historically within the KenPom rankings. And so many people look at their rosters, and I bet every single one of these coaches at the end of the year, only one's going to be truly happy that they've won it all. And I think other coaches are going to be like, man, if only I had this team on any other year, I'd be feeling much better about the outcome.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it like that. That's a good point. As you were talking, I was kind of taking it in the direction of you don't have any happy to be there teams, right? You don't.
Sure.
Not that anybody ever admits that in the moment, but you don't have an NC State last year that is on a magical run, and when it ends, there's disappointment, obviously. You never want those things to end, but there's also the understanding that, like, they were not one of the best teams in the country all year. They were an underachieving team all year.
Right.
They got hot at the right time. I said on one of my appearances yesterday, is like, none of these teams are hot right now because they've been hot all year, right? Like, the only one that comes to mind is Auburn stumbled a little bit down the blocks, down the home stretch, and they've won 4 games in the tournament. Like,
Yep.
They're not stumbling anymore. You have to be good to win these games. So, yeah, I like upsets. I like upsets early in tournaments. I think I can speak for the majority of people. Like, yeah, give me a 14 or a 13 win in a game, maybe 2. Get them out of there by the Elite 8. Let's get some really good basketball games. Let's not run the risk of having some completely overmatched team get out there and lose by 30 in the Elite 8 or the Final Four.
Yeah, I think we're going to have good basketball games this weekend, especially when you look at what Houston does defensively, what Duke does offensively, but also what Duke can do on the defensive end of the floor. Looking at that, last year's game ended up being 54-51. You mentioned the injury to Jamal Shead that took place in the game. I feel like we're just bound to see more points being scored in this year's version of the Final Four game. What type of style game do you think will unfold in front of us?
Yeah, number one, if you give me an over under of 105, I'll take the over. And
Yeah,
I might be tempted based on the numbers there. I might take the first half over and try to really cash in.
sure.
Houston shoots the ball. That was the one thing that jumped out on their team page, looking at Ken Palm and doing a 5 things to know about them earlier this week. They're third in the country in 3-point percentage, making almost 40%. That's worlds better than where they've been. I think the last 5 years, their average national rank was like 149th. I think the highest it ever was 115. So this is a Houston team that can really light you up from behind the arc. And the way they do that is, this is where it does get a little carbon copy-ish. They have they have a guard trio that they rely heavily on. Last year, they had a guard trio that they relied heavily on. You bring back LJ Cryer and Emmanuel Sharp, and instead of Jamal Shed, who's now in the NBA, they brought in Milos Uzan, a junior point guard from Oklahoma, who's been really, really good for them. I think this game probably gets settled in the 70s or 80s. Maybe high 60s if both defenses are able to play physically and without fouling. I mean, I know this is what everybody wants to hear and wants to get excited about, but a lot of how this game goes and who wins is going to be determined on how tight the whistle is. So make sure you're watching that in the first 5 minutes or so. And then that'll tell you a lot about whether, both teams want to play physically. So that'll tell you about whether both of them are able to play the way they want to play.
Well, and yeah, thank you for saying that. I mean, I made the point a little bit earlier in the week on the show that it felt like the first weekend, you could make the case that Duke was really getting the benefit of the whistle in those first couple of round games. But last weekend against Arizona and Alabama, in some regards, I felt like it wasn't going in Duke's favor at all in terms of where, the whistles were coming, the fouls being called, how frequent we were seeing those things. And so, yeah, you hate to be that person, but sometimes it plays out. It's a factor in how the game kind of unfolds and that sort of thing. And I just hope we're in a spot where we're not dealing with foul trouble too early on some of the teams for both sides, best players in a matchup like this.
Yeah, I thought maybe I'm a little jaded because where I was sitting with right behind the Duke bench and with all the Duke luminaries behind me. But the one phrase that stood out during the Arizona game was that the refs were reffing the score and not the game. Like they were trying to tighten things up. They were, what Duke was being called for on one end, Arizona was not being called for on the other end. That might happen occasionally. It's not going to ever be perfect, and the amount of contact is ever the exact same. But it did feel like that was happening. And look, I mean, sometimes that does happen, and it takes a pretty brought together unit to still win a game when that's going on.
All right, so Duke and Houston set to play one another in the Final Four. We've been talking about this Duke Blue Devils team going up against a very talented Houston defense. What about Duke's defense? What can they do? And a few more thoughts on the offense as well when we continue our conversation here in just a moment. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch Money, I was able to realize just how much spending I was having on food delivery. Now I'm able to budget smarter and save so much more. I love the all-in-one convenience where instead of having to juggle multiple apps, you can use Monarch Money to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE at checkout at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for half off your first year. Monarch Money is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. All right, Conor O'Neill's here with us talking Duke basketball, set to play in the Final Four against Houston. Obviously, this Houston team's well known for their defense with what Kelvin Sampson's done over the years. But this Duke defense is getting into a rhythm here as well as of late. A Houston team that shoots it really well from the outside, but that was also the case for Alabama. And Duke did a remarkable job compared to what we had seen the last time out and taking them away from that three-point line. How can Duke replicate that? Do they want to replicate that? What does it kind of look like to you defensively for this Duke team?
Yeah, if you can bottle up what Khaman Maluach was able to do against Mark Sears and Aiden Holloway out on the perimeter and translate that over to this game against Houston, Duke signs up for that 10 out of 10 times. I thought Khaman was the best player on the court on, what was it, Saturday night?
Yep.
Just from the standpoint of it's funny. This is 2 out of 3 years for Jon Scheyer as a head coach. It's a pretty big luxury to have as a head coach, to have your 7-foot center be able to switch on to guards and not worry about him giving up a ton of blow-by drives or crossing his feet over and falling down and giving up a three-pointer. Khaman Maluach and before him, Derek Lively, they're just so good on the perimeter. And when you can do that, when you can – everybody I feel like I've said this over the last couple of years about Duke. Everybody says they want to switch 1 through 5.
Yeah.
Not everybody who says they want to switch 1 through 5 actually is able to switch 1 through 5. Duke is able to switch 1 through 5 and do it in earnest, because not only do you have a 7-2 guy that's capable of defending guards, you have guards that are 6'5" and 6'6" that can hold their own if they're switched onto a big who tries to post them up on the block. And that's like Sion James is 6'6", 225. Nobody's putting him under the bucket on
That's a great
post
point.
up.
Yeah.
And Tyrese Proctor fronts and is really aggressive and is long and athletic, and he makes it really hard to get the ball into the post. So the way Duke plays defense, I've said this a couple times this year too, other teams can try to replicate, or no, that's the wrong word. Other teams can try to imitate what Duke does defensively. I don't know if anybody else in the country can replicate what Duke does defensively because of the combination where you have the length, you have the center who can play out on the perimeter. By the way, you have Cooper Flagg, who might be one of the most advanced defensive freshmen we've ever seen.
No doubt.
It's just this it all goes into the melting pot of what Duke is able to do to you defensively. And that translated to taking a team that had made 25 threes and scored 113 points in their previous game to 65 points and 8 threes against them in the Elite Eight.
Yeah, and 20 fewer attempts than what they had done in that game as well. I like that point that you make, though, because, I think about switching 1 through 5, and I do think more just as a viewer about, oh, man, if it's this big guy out with a smaller, shifty guard, we're really in trouble. But you never really think about the opposite of that, where if you've got this amazing player down in the post and he's got a little fella on him, that's a lot of success for a team, and you can't really look for that advantage if you're going up against this Duke team.
Yeah, I mean, that's where the ball should go.
Yeah.
As long as you've got a big guy that you feel comfortable can shoot over a guy that he's half a foot or so taller than. Duke just makes it impossible for you to A, get the ball in there, and B, to score over their guards because they're so big.
Big time win for Duke on the defensive end, and then also able to score offensively against Alabama. That was impressive to me in the second half, able to balloon the lead at the end there all the way to 20 points. Although I made the point, looking at this Duke offense, Connor, where at halftime, Duke has 5 3-point makes. If you would have told us at the break against a team like Alabama, they're only going to finish the game with 6, just 1 more coming in the second half, I don't know that I feel that great about Duke's chances of winning that game. And yet offensively, they still found something in the pick and rolls they were running and just easy shots that they were getting around the rim, taking advantage of making free throws at the line. Just really impressed that, even though they only made 6 3-pointers, Duke still in an NCAA tournament game put up 85 on the board.
it's one of these instances where we've been told all year that sometimes Duke will tell each other in huddles or on, the on-court huddles before free throws, stuff like that, just hit singles. And if Alabama is going to give you the short roll or the lob, don't worry about trying to kick it to the corner and get a three-pointer. You especially don't need that when you go wire to wire. I think the closest it was in the second half was 6.
Right.
So it's not like Duke was ever in position where they had to chase points, to borrow a little football lingo. Like, they could afford to be patient and just, okay, Alabama scored their last 2 or 3 possessions. We're going to come down and get a lob to Khaman Maluach, or we're going to come down and Con Knippel is going to have a big man matched up against him, and he's going to be able to pivot 5 times and get a 8-footer off the glass against him. It's really simple basketball. I go back to, I can't remember when he said it, but one of the games this year in the Duke locker room, Tyrese Proctor told me we'd be playing mismatch basketball all the time. And I just keep thinking about that. And it's just like, yeah, I mean, it is really simple. And that's why I wrote, I think it was my column after the second round game against Baylor. It's like the precision with which Duke attacks you is so simple. They make it seem so simple. It's just like, well, Tyrese Proctor's hot. Yep. Find him on the fast break. Cooper Flagg's the best player on the court. Any night that Duke plays a game, get him in an ISO. Like, have him get downhill. Khaman Maluach is 7'2". Just throw the ball anywhere close to the rim, and he'll probably dunk it. But there's knowing all that stuff, and then there's going out and actually doing it and executing it. And that's where the connection between those two is why this is a 35-3 team.
Big time performance from Duke, and I think we're set to see another big one coming up on Saturday against Houston. Let's step aside and take one more break on the show. We'll start to wrap up and have some final thoughts about the matchup when we come back here in a moment on Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils here today, brought to you by our friends at Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product information to help you get the job done right. Plus, with the complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free TradeMaster program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the TradeMaster program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Supply House is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. All right, we're moving forward here on the program, talking about Duke basketball getting set to play Houston in the Final Four. They were led in scoring, the Duke Blue Devils, by Con Knippel with 21 points against Alabama. How can he make an impact? Do you think we're gearing up for another kind of big offensive night for Knippel?
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be, I think, the one who has an advantage size-wise. I mean, Houston, like Alabama, plays 3 guards. They have a 3-guard lineup. I think I don't have my KenPom pages up. I think Sharp is the one who's like 6'3", 210. Right. That's a big guard. Cryer might be the one who's 6'4". Uzan might be a little on the smaller side. I tend to think, any of those 3 guys, I think it'll be Sharp, the bigger guy, on Con. But Con is 6'7", I think 217 is what Duke lists him at. I mean, he's going to have the size advantage, and he's not only does he have that, he knows how to use it. We've been talking all year about his understanding of leverage and changing speeds and being able to, I say this respectfully, maximize his deficiencies in athleticism.
Sure.
Like, he might not be the most explosive guy on the court, but you wouldn't know it based on his
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Because he understands how to play the game differently than most people do when they're 18 or 19 years old. That's why he's going to be a lottery pick. So yeah, he's been on a really nice run. His double-digit game streak came to an end against Baylor or Mount St. Mary's. He had a little bit of an off game against one of them where it didn't wind up mattering much. But yeah, I would expect him to have a large to very large role in this game.
Yeah, same. I'm really excited. If I had to pick a leading scorer in Duke's game, I think that's kind of the direction I would go. I feel pretty good about what Khan's been able to do, and I think Cooper's going to have plenty of opportunities to get his, but also initiate a lot and be able to find somebody like Khan can able to knock it down from the outside. What about the bench for Duke? Like, is there a big X factor that you see stepping up?
The X factor could be the 3 to 5 minutes that they'll probably get from Malik Brown in the first half. I mean, I'll tell you what, like, not that I had poor respect for him before last weekend, but watching him come to the bench after the few times he checked into games, and I was sitting right behind Duke's bench, so I could see every emotion on his face. He's in pain, man.
Yeah.
He's enjoying it, but that shoulder is just a ticking time bomb until it gets surgery, and he's out there putting. I don't want to make it's not like he's putting his life on the line,
right?
He's putting a vulnerable body part on the line when he's in there, even for just a few minutes. And it's a shoulder injury. You think about the way he's hurt himself and how much he reaches and uses his shoulders that makes him as good as he is defensively. Yeah. And so he's out there trying to be as effective as he is with two good shoulders, and he's trying to just strike the balance of what he can do without putting himself through too much pain.
And I kept seeing him kind of knock the ball away or just be super you're right. As soon as he checks in, he just goes into basketball mode.
Yeah.
Even though there is this kind of hindrance, for lack of a better word, there with the shoulder injury that he's trying to play through.
Yeah. And I think I thought this wouldn't be necessarily the case last weekend with their two games. I think against Houston, it will be. I think this is a Mason Gillis game. I think you need a tough guy who's been there before. Every time he gets two hands on the ball, you don't feel like it's going to be taken away from him.
Sure.
So I think this is the game where, not that there hasn't been a game yet this year that Duke hasn't been grateful to have Mason Gillis, but I think this is one where they really say, like, we needed this guy in the portal. This is what we brought him here for, to hit a couple tough threes and to do a lot of dirty work. And I think this is the type of game that he can shine.
In what ways, if at all, has your opinion changed of Jon Scheyer now that he's got this Final Four kind of on his resume? I think about the in-game adjustments that we've seen throughout this entire season and tournament run in particular. And, man, just to think this guy's only in his third year coaching is just kind of silly.
Dude, I don't know if my opinion's changed.
Sure, yeah.
Or not. I have thought he has done a hell of a job with the first two teams. That first team had a whole lot of freshmen that did not know what they were doing. They had a role that they had in mind for Dariq Whitehead that he never was able to play because of his injury statuses throughout the year. I thought last year's team was a talented and flawed roster. They lacked toughness. They got pushed around, and they were inconsistent on the defensive end. I think some of that was Jon, some of that falls on Jon, but I think more of it falls on that team's leadership from within the locker room. And I think Jon deserves a ton of credit for being able to say, we went to an Elite Eight. It's nice. It's not good enough. And for recalibrating his roster in the way that he did, to kind of say some hard truths to guys that had been in the program that he had spent years developing relationships with on the recruiting trail. And once they got to Duke, I mean, I don't know how anybody can have a sour or poor opinion of him. I can't wait until, no matter how this weekend turns out, I can't wait until next year when if they lose 2 out of their first 6 games again, we're going to be hearing about how Jon Scheyer can't coach unless he has a generational talent on his roster.
Yeah.
So that's going to be really fun. But and I think he's already at 37 years old, one of the top 5 or 10 coaches in college basketball.
It's going to be fun to watch him on Saturday on that big stage leading the Duke basketball program. 18th Final Four in school history for Duke, and this is the first under head coach Jon Scheyer. All right, quickly, just your thought, a pick here. How do you see the other game playing out Saturday when you look at Auburn and Florida, to put you on the spot here?
I'm going to hitch my wagon to the guard that can make big shots. And it has a little bit to do with Janai Broom's elbow injury.
Sure.
I didn't even see the play, but I just heard people saying he hurt 3 body parts on the same play. I think it's been categorized as an elbow.
Yeah, I do think 3 is even an understatement. When people go back and watch that replay, it's like, holy cow, this guy's body just broke.
Yeah. So that plus watching Walter Clayton make the shots that he made, both on TV against who did they beat? Texas Tech.
Yeah.
Watching those shots and then watching the shots in person against UConn, because I thought UConn was going to knock him out. I thought we were going to have another week of Dan Hurley bullshit to deal with.
Right.
But I'll hitch my wagon to the guard that makes tough shots 10 out of 10 times in this tournament.
Yeah, I think I'm there with you. I think you got to be pretty impressed with what we've seen from Florida. And they beat Auburn head-to-head. They put 90 on them in Neville Arena, which is a tough place to go and do that. So we'll see how all of it unfolds. Obviously, hopefully we're seeing the Duke team getting set for a game coming up on Monday in the national title game. Nonetheless, though, you're going to be in San Antonio. You've got a lot of Final Four stuff already on the website, Conor. Tell us about the work and how people can get plugged in and support you.
Oh my God. Go to duke.rivals.com. Sign up for a premium membership. I understand nobody wants to pay for content these days, but I promise you it's worth it. There's a feature up right now on Khaman Maluach that has quotes from Justin Robinson that nobody else has, that lays out his development over the last 5 or 6 months with Duke and has some input from Khaman. So please go check it out. I'll have more stuff once I get down to San Antonio. Some more locker room leftovers from this past weekend, and then we start interviews tomorrow. So we'll have the content cranking over at Devils Illustrated. And yet in all of this, you're still able to give the people a baseball recap from this past weekend. We're letting them know about some of the festivities that took place with the McDonald's All-American game earlier. I mean, you're on top of everything, Conor. So really appreciate people supporting you and appreciate your time each and every week coming here on Locked On Blue Devils. I'll see you again soon, man, okay? Thanks, JJ. Appreciate it. All right. That's Conor O'Neill. He's joining us here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. What an exciting Final Four we've got coming up between Duke and Houston on Saturday. That's going to do it for today's show. Please be sure to follow and subscribe to us wherever it is that you get your podcast, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.